The PSP, Sony's first foray into the world of portable games. The PSP was released in 2005, and it had Locoroco on it, so it's obviously the best system ever made. And while I'd love to cover the system and its extensive library of games in general, this is a fighting game channel, so that's exactly what we're here to cover. As you might be able to tell, this is a modded PS Vita, and as I currently don't own a PSP, just pretend that it's one for the sake of the video. With its tiny joystick, D-pad, 4 face buttons, and 2 triggers, the PSP might not seem like a good fit for fighting games. After all, there's no way to use a regular controller or even a fight stick with this thing for better control, so how do fighting games work on the system? I've installed a few PSP fighting games onto my trusty handheld for us to go over and see if they still hold up. From 2D to 3D fighting games, the PSP has an admittedly good variety of fighters to choose from when you're on the go. So buckle up, grab a drink and a snack, and let's start with a launch title for the PSP that came out 19 years ago. Capcom's very own Darkstalkers Chronicle, The Chaos Tower. If you're not familiar with Darkstalkers, I don't blame you, especially because the last mainline entry into the series came out in 1997. In simple terms, it's a 2D one-on-one fighting game with a horror/goth aesthetic, so instead of playing as martial artists, wrestlers, etc., you'll be playing as succubi, zombies, fish creatures, werewolves, and whatever Anacharis is. Darkstalkers is similar to Street Fighter in that the button layout is the exact same, so 3 punches and 3 kicks for a total of 6 attack buttons. The Street Fighter similarities end there, however, as Darkstalkers is very fast paced and it rewards aggression. When you hit the enemy, part of their life bar turns white, and this is recoverable life that will regenerate over time, so you need to keep attacking in order to win as fast as possible. Darkstalkers Chronicle is actually a port of the Japanese exclusive Dreamcast game Vampire Chronicle for Matching Service, which was a version of the game that came out in 2000 and allowed you to play online via the Dreamcast online system. What's interesting about this version of the game is that you can select any version of a character for battle. There were 5 games in the Darkstalkers series prior to this release, so while it's based on Darkstalkers 3, or Vampire Savior as fans like to call it, you can choose a version of a character from one of the previous games, like the Vampire Hunter version of Morrigan for example. The game itself is really cool, but on the PSP it's quite difficult to control. Things like general movement and quarter circle motions aren't that bad, but 360 motions for command grabs are almost impossible on the system's D-pad, and the game doesn't support the analog stick, so you're forced to use the D-pad. Admittedly, I'm not much of a Darkstalkers player, but a good friend of mine is an expert at the game, so I asked him to see how it feels on the PSP compared to the regular arcade version with an arcade fight stick. Alright, Salty, what do you think?
It could be better.
When it comes to content, you have the regular arcade mode where you select your fighter, beat up a bunch of randomly selected enemies, and then fight Jeddah, the final boss. Accomplishing this will grant you your character's ending, so you can see what becomes of them after the battle is over. The game also has multiplayer that connects 2 people together over Wi-Fi, but unfortunately I didn't have anyone else to test this out with. However, reviews claim that there were multiple ways to play multiplayer and the connectivity worked quite well, so that's good to hear. There's also training mode, which is self-explanatory, but weirdly there's no command list, so if you want to see your character's moves, you're going to have to Google it. The penultimate mode is Chronicle, which is a gallery. Here you can view illustrations, character endings, and to listen to the game's sounds in the sound test. Finally, we have the main mode of the game, Tower Mode. You pick 3 characters and fight up a tower against enemies in single round fights. These start off normal, but sometimes you'll get a battle with a special requirement, like winning a round without using a punch button. Depending on how you win, you'll progress through the tower differently. This is a fun mode, but the biggest downside, and hell, this is a downside of the entire game, is that the loading times are a bit annoying. I want to get right into the battle, not wait for it to load. Other than the loading times and control issues, I can't complain. It's a very well made port of a classic fighting game and it's very fun to play, so I recommend it. Moving on to a more widely known fighting game, 2006's Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max is funnily enough the definitive version of Alpha 3. The reason for this is that the PSP version has all the bonus characters from the Game Boy Advance version, as well as Ingrid from the cancelled game Capcom Fighting Evolution. It has reduced load times and all the frames of animation from the arcade version, so you don't miss out on anything by playing the PSP version of the game. There are also heaps of modes for you to play, like the usual arcade mode, versus mode, training mode, etc. But there are also some interesting ones, like Dramatic Battle, where you and an AI partner fight the final boss, Reverse Dramatic Battle, where the final boss and an AI partner fight you, Variable Battle, where you can tag in a partner in a 2v2 format, and 100 Kumite, which is a series of 100 consecutive fights without any breaks. Luckily, you can use the analog stick, but the small size is a bit uncomfortable to use, especially when doing things like Shoryukens or command grabs like Zangief's SPD. But with enough time and practice, you can easily adapt to the odd control layout of the system. The meat and potatoes of the game comes in the form of World Tour mode, where you select a character, Sodom in my case, and you travel all over the world through this menu. You usually get 1 or 2 fights to choose from, and these are either really easy or super hard and make me want to bomb the Capcom offices. They range from regular one-on-one fights, to multiple fights in a row, to dramatic battles, etc. So while the difficulty spikes can be annoying, there's a commendable amount of variety to keep you playing. You also get experience points for winning matches, which goes into one of your isms, which are the gameplay styles that Alpha 3 offers. I know everyone likes to pick V-ism for custom combo shenanigans, but I like to use A-ism to get access to Sodom's multiple level 3 supers. All in all, Alpha 3 Max is another great showing from Capcom. If you're more into anime fighters, then fret not, because the PSP is home to Guilty Gear Judgment. This is a 2-in-1 package, as not only do you get Guilty Gear X2 Reload the Midnight Carnival, but you also get Judgment, which is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up game. X2 Reload is what you'd expect, a straight port of the home console version, with arcade, training, MOM, etc. And while this is pretty cool, Judgment takes the cake. It's not the best beat-em-up I've ever played, but it's kind of fun, and it has a nice amount of content to it. After selecting your character, you're thrown into some classic beat-em-up goodness, but with the control scheme and combo system of X2 Reload. The stages in this mode aren't that short, and they do take some skill to finish, so you can't just switch your brain off and mindlessly button mash your way through to completion. We also learn a bit more about the characters and their backstories in the Judgment game mode, and this is always a nice touch to have in fighting games. As for how it controls, yeah, it's quite good. You have 6 buttons: punch, kick, slash, heavy slash, dust, and respect, and you can remap these to how you see fit in the settings. Playing through arcade mode in X2 Reload is just as fun as it is in the home console version, as although I'm playing on a handheld, I think something like Guilty Gear's freeform and very loose combo system suits itself to a handheld with small buttons over something like Street Fighter with its shorter and a bit more restrictive combos. The graphics are also awesome too. Like Darkstalkers and Street Fighter before it, Guilty Gear X2 is a sprite-based fighting game, and luckily, all the character sprites and frames of animation are present in both the X2 port and Judgment. The only criticism I can give of this game overall is that it gets quite repetitive. Judgment is fun at first, but you slowly start to feel like you're just going through the motions as it progresses. Overall, Guilty Gear Judgment is a solid offering if you're looking for some portable anime fighting game goodness. Moving on to the stage of history brings us Soul Calibur Broken Destiny. As a PSP exclusive, this game has Kratos as a guest character. Kratos is slow, but what he lacks in speed he makes up for in terms of raw power with lots of attacks that break the enemy's guard, and overall he's recreated very faithfully. As for the other characters, there are 27 minus Kratos. All the characters from Soul Calibur 4 return, except for the Star Wars guys, of course. It also controls like how you would expect it to. Square is horizontal slash, triangle is vertical slash, circle is kick, and cross is block. The triggers can be mapped to button macros to make performing techniques such as throws easier, and this is a big help in battle. Broken Destiny also has a variety of modes. You have Quick Match, where you choose who to fight out of a list of AI opponents, and if you beat them, you gain special titles for your player profile. The Gauntlet is a combination of a story mode and a tutorial, and it's also the main mode of the game. After picking your character, I went with Amy. You're thrust into fights that teach you how to play the game, with short cutscenes and dialogue sequences laced throughout. This mode tells you that it's not canon to the overarching Soul Calibur plot, and this makes sense, considering it literally starts off with you fighting a wolf man in the forest. The story sequences switch between the regular art style and an anime-inspired chibi art style for comedic effect whenever something funny happens. And there are a lot of comedic moments, because this mode has a very light-hearted tone, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. There are 34 chapters in total, with each having 2 to 4 fights, so it doesn't last for very long, but it's still a fun time, and you do learn some genuinely helpful info about how to play, like offense, defense, movement, how to block certain attacks, how to do ring outs, how to break throws, etc. There are also trials for you to do, and these come in 3 types. Trial of Attack tests how good you are at offense, Trial of Defense obviously tests how good you are at defense, and Endless Trials, which tests both, and this is like a survival mode in other fighting games. Versus mode is exactly that, a way for you to play with someone else over ad hoc connectivity, and finally, Training mode, which allows you to practice for as long as you want. Broken Destiny also looks really, really good, and it's probably the game that, graphically speaking, impressed me the most. It looks amazing for a PSP game, and every character looks exactly like how they should, but if you want something that looks completely scuffed, check out character customization. Changing your physical attributes and muscularity from Soul Calibur 4 has been removed, but what we do have is the ability to rotate and reposition items. Character customization is a major part of what makes Soul Calibur great, and the customization in Broken Destiny is awesome. It's a high quality character customization system, and I had lots of fun ruining the looks of the characters for a laugh. Overall, this is a really fun game to play, and even though I'm not super into Soul Calibur, I think this is the best game I've played in this video. I enjoyed it that much. That was a lot of games we just covered. I never had a PSP growing up, but I did have a PS Vita, so I wanted to go back to some of the games that I missed out on when I was younger to try them out on actual Sony hardware to see if they still hold up. Unfortunately, I now have carpal tunnel because of playing all these games on the Vita, but I think it was worth it. I recommend trying these out, either on real hardware or on an emulator if you get the chance, because while these games are old, and in the case of Darkstalkers, Guilty Gear, and Soul Calibur, pretty obscure, they still compelled me to fire them up and experience what they had to offer for the first time. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.